Dionysus, the god of wine. Now, I've mentioned my spirituality a little bit, but I haven't quite discussed my religious views before on this channel. Before I get into this, I want to preface by saying that I am not in any way, shape, or form proselytizing. I don't really believe in a punishment afterlife, and I don't think that anybody's going to be, smited for having a different view than me. To me, this is just an extremely important part of my life, and it heavily influences, the way I think, the way I see the world. It influences my creativity, the way I see creativity, just fundamentally to its core. Another thing is that I am not a mythic literalist. I don't believe that mythology actually happened, but rather I think it's a way to explain the nature of the divine. Now, if you want to know a little bit more about what the ancients actually believed, I recommend reading Dionysus. Probably fucking up the pronunciation of that because it's in Latin. But yeah, that was like a kind of, it means that on the nature of the gods, and it was written by the philosopher and historian Cicero from all the way in ancient Rome. He kind of wrote about the different ways that people viewed their gods at that time. But primarily most people did not literally believe that the myths actually happened. So, without further ado, let's get into this. As I am recording this video, it's the first day of the Greater Dionysia Festival. This was a festival in ancient Greece that was dedicated to the god Dionysus, and today modern practitioners have done a little bit of a recreation of that, and we've kind of tried to recreate it anyway, but yeah. Now, if you know anything about Dionysus, you're probably thinking to yourself, really? The god of wine? What's so special about that? Well, I'm here to talk about that. Dionysus was considered to be the most human of the gods and the most divine of humans. If you know anything about the myths, he was born like a demigod. He died and then became a god after that. But he wasn't like other demigods in the mythology. He didn't care about seeking fame or seeking glory. And for a god of wine and ecstasy, he was depicted as mostly sexless except for his wife Ariadne. In fact, he's probably the only great god who was faithful to one woman. And in the ancient times, his relationship with Ariadne was depicted in art as the pinnacle of a relationship, because of how faithful they were to each other and how much they cared about each other in the myths. Yeah. So another aspect, of him in general is that he was seen as this god of release, and in his the rituals that were dedicated to him, a lot of them were a release of pent up taboos at the time. People would they would dress in a way that was considered to be socially unacceptable at the time. They would be hollering and carrying on, having just a grand old time, and when they were done, they would move on with their lives after the catharsis was over. And to me, this feels extremely reminiscent of metal music as a whole, especially black metal. The full-on embracing of social taboos, dressing in a way that's a little bit fucking out of the mainstream, doing things that are deemed questionable by society, the theatrics of black metal, you know what I'm talking about, the fucking corpse paint and the way that they fucking dress with all the fucking spikes, those fucking spikes, all that shit is just fucking so Dionysian to me, you know what I mean? What else, the fucking maniacs in the fucking mosh pit, just overcome by the mad rhythm of the transgressive music. And the release of these so-called negative emotions like anger that people demonize and say, you can't fucking express that. Well, we're gonna fucking express it anyway. And this is why a big part of my musical endeavors are dedicated to Dionysus. Because he's just a god that I find incredibly important to me. And yeah, I wanted to make this video to delve a little bit into my personal beliefs, as well as to honor the deity who heavily influences my creative path and has definitely changed my life for the better. Hail Dionysus, the god who frees men of inhibitions and allows for that sacred release in music. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. And remember, keep blasting that loud fucking music. Peace.